Good afternoon, board. I want to go over some of the slides from the information that we're going to talk about on Monday. This is to talk about our tax rate presentation, to talk about how we're going to set the tax rate, hopefully at our August the 17th meeting. So let's get started here. I've got quite a bit of new information. All of it's good, I think. So I think you're going to be happy with what you see. So we know that there's a few things that we always have this little disclaimer because the tax laws, the tax rates sometimes change, tax values. There's still quite a bit of protest out there, but we're going to be using the values that the appraisal district gave us for 724 rather. This is what's called the estimated certified values. After all the protests come in, we could still get some more value change. We could lose some value or stay about where we are. But she's factored in some of the protests, so I think we got some good numbers to work for. Of course, we've been going through this process since a long time ago, and we're kind of getting to the end. And I wanted to make sure you understand that we've talked about this many, many times, but we're at the point now where we need to be able to set our tax rate. And the tax rate set by board resolution. Some of you newer ones may not remember that, but it's just a resolution where we'll set the M&O and the INS tax rate. It's set with a single vote. There's not a separate vote for maintenance and interest and sinking. It's all one tax rate. All right, so let's review. Back on April the 30th, when we were setting our budget, we had a preliminary certified value on the last day of April of almost 5.8 billion. Incredible number, but that's what it is. And we were using an 11.29 increase over the prior year. Remember, the state uses a 4.01 increase. So anything over that automatically reduces our Tier 1 tax rate. And at that time, it was about a little over 6 cents. And at that time, we had subject to many revisions that could happen until the certified value actually was received on July 25th, which we did. So remember, I'm talking past stuff right here. Our tax roll growth on April 30th was very good. It was about almost 6%, 309 million. Most of that was homes. There was some commercial, some retail. We didn't have a lot of the TERS values in at that time, but we still had a good growth, and I think Midlothian will continue to grow. Now, here's where we are today. On July the 25th, that's Saturday, Kathy and the appraisal district sent us the certified values, estimated certified values, sorry. We immediately on Monday morning, we worked with those over the weekend. On that Monday morning, we sent them to the state because the state has to set our maximum approved rate, our Tier 1. We had a great growth, 13.79. We'll show you where that came from here in just a minute. So certainly that's bigger than the 4.01. So that immediately drove our tax rate down a little bit more. So that's good. That's great for our taxpayers. We're going to be able to decrease our tax rate even further than we thought it was going to be. But remember that magic 84.01 cents. That's our tax. That's the Tier 1 tax rate that we can set. All right, so here's some new information for you. The growth in our new improvements really took off. It went up to 584 million. That's almost a 10% increase over last year. Again, a lot of houses, some commercial, some real estate, but boy, Google Data Center really took off. We knew we were going to get some more value out of there because they have things on the ground now that obviously they didn't have on the ground in July of what would have been 2019. So when you look at 2020, they've really grown. You're going to be able to see some similar growth to this until that thing gets built out. Remember, there's 10 pods in that data center plus all the infrastructure. So we're going to see some big increases over the next couple of years. That's in the TERS, so we need to talk about the TERS values in a minute. TERS values on April 30th, we're using 581 million. TERS values on July 25th were 755. That's not unusual to see a big growth like that because these big companies will render their taxes at a certain time after they see what they've got on the ground. I can remember when I was out at the power plant in the first few years when we were building that power plant and dealing with Kathy and in the appraisal district, that we had to open, here's what we're spending, here's what we expect to spend, all of those things happen. And so to see that value go up 42% from just really the Google facility. Now, what that does for us, it benefits the INS account because the INS can, those dollars flow, they flow to the TERS, flow right back to us. Whereas the M&O dollars, the operating dollars, they flow to the TERS. We get some of those back from the TERS. We get some of them back from the state and state funding. But the beauty of that is That 755 million does not count against us for state funding. If you throw that on our values for state funding, we'd be losing millions in state funds. Remember that this year, the tax rate and tax values, it's a combination of a cap of 2.5% that they put on property growth, and then also that cap of 4.01. That's more of a floor. In other words, ours is higher than that, so it just doesn't really help us too much on that part of it. But the tier one rate has been calculated now. This is kind of an old slide, but I want to make sure you understand that we got that back. And the next day, I was so happy that we got it back, as nobody knew really how long it was going to take to get that. They approved ours really overnight. So here's our old slide. You like this slide? I think it helps you understand that the cap, tier one we're talking about here, tier one, the highest it can be in the state is 91.64. The lowest it can be is 82.47. That's a 90%, really a 10% gap in there. When we were doing the budget, it was about 85.65, our tax rate. And here's the algorithm. The 2.5% cap is in this formula. You can see that 1.025 is a multiplier. But unfortunately, you don't get that because you have to divide it by your growth. The state uses 1.041, and when you do the algorithm, you see that it comes out to be that 91.64 that you saw on the graph as a point there. Okay, so here's where we are right now. Wow, look how we've slid down the graph to 84.01. That's, again, good for our taxpayers, good for our growth. We're in the best situation we could be here. We're being able to get growth and new people in here, new businesses in here, helping to pay the bills, and yet our people who have been here over the time are getting to see some tax relief. So I'm happy with the way this has turned out. Here's our formula. It's really 1.025 times our old rate, which is 93 cents, divided by that 1.1379. And if you do this on the calculator, you're going to get a slightly different number than 0.8401 by 24,000, so if I recall the number. So what I've done is just show this is what the state has set our tier one maximum rate to be. So again, I think we're in good shape on that. Savings for our taxpayers and our growth and our values has really helped us. Okay, so each penny, sorry I skipped a slide, each penny in the M&O tax rate generates right under $500,000 now because of that. Because of the increase in the growth of the tax value. Each penny in the INS generates 569. Okay, what's the difference there? Well, the difference is the TERS. The TERS money goes into the TERS, comes back to us two different ways. The INS money comes directly to us. So that penny generates M&O that much money, but we also get some state funds for that too. So if I added those in, we'd be back to almost to that number. So that's an important number right there for us to remember on the INS tax rate. Now, the tier two rate, I want to talk about this some more. I know that this is something that I know you understand this, but I think it's important that to do my job, I need to be able to tell you all of the things that you know. You guys know more about taxes and budgeting here in Midlothian, I think, than most school boards do, because I'm hopefully been able to try to teach you this stuff and help you understand it so that you can make the right decision for everybody. Because I know you don't make a decision for one group. You've got to make a decision for everybody across the board. So tier one is an allocation in the state funding formulas that allow for enrichment, but which is intended to supplement the basic one. Tier one is basic. Tier two is the supplemental money. Tier two focuses on taxpayer equity by ensuring that school districts receive a guaranteed amount of funding for each penny of tax effort for each student in their weighted average daily attendance. What that means is a penny in Venus and a penny in Midlothian don't make the same money on the tax rate. But this tier two thing helps to equalize that. It's a good program. It's really good for Midlothian. We're kind of in the middle. It's not maybe so good for the real rich, maybe really good for the real poor. When you're kind of in the middle like we are, it's still a good thing for us. So I want you to know our first 4 pennies in the enrichment rate generates almost $2.6 million in state funds. I put 4 cents into the state funding template, and that's the number that pops out. It's so easy to do. The additional penny, if we were to get that additional penny, it generates $605,000 more dollars in state funds. So if we don't take that extra penny, we lose that money. It would be nice to be able to have it on this year. I'm going to show you some things about that. I know that's kind of a sticking point for some, but it's really important that we understand that we're just leaving this money there if we don't take the penny. I'm going to show you a way we can do it. All right, so here we go. At the June 15th public hearing, we showed these tax rates to the audience, to the people. This is what we publicized in the paper. This is the number that we've been looking at all along, was right under $1.40, 1.3965. That was 1.46. I mean, sorry, we were at 1.47. And so we automatically saw a decrease there in our values, our rate. And that was good for our taxpayers. That's, again, about that 7 cents and a little over that we were talking about all along. Now, I want to look at this tax rate. I think that we can have an M&O tax rate of 88 cents, 88.01 cents. Our INS rate is 50 cents. That's what it's been. That generates a 1.3801 tax rate. Compared that to the $1.47 that we were this prior year. The other thing is, if you compare that to the one we had in April, we're down another 1.64 cents. Very good for our taxpayers. So let's look at this graph. I like graphs. I know you guys know I do, and I like to give you options. I think that's always fair to you to have something to think about. So I'm hoping this will make sense when I talk about it a little bit. And I'm trying to keep this as short as I can, but I just can't not tell you some things. I have to tell you everything. So look at this chart. The second column is where we are today. We have a 93-cent tier 1, a 4-cent tier 2. That's 97 cents for O&M. Add the 50 cents for debt service. That's $1.47. That's where we were. In June, when we had the board, when the board passed the budget and we had the little hearing we had on public hearing on our tax rate and everything, that's where we were. 85.65, 4 cents, gives you 89.65. Plus that gives you $1.3965. We had that already sorted in the bank. We already knew that we probably were not going to be more than that. Now I'm going to give you 3 scenarios. I'm calling it real creative here, guys. August 1, August 2, August 3. Because we're going to try to set the tax rate at the 17th meeting. And I'd like for you to look at these things. Now, go back to June just a minute. We said that after we did this, we'd have about $2.3 million for debt repayment. I know this is another interesting thing for some of you. You really want to do this. You know how I feel about it. I want to pay all the debt down we can. If you go to August 1st, now let's look at August number 1. That tier 1 tax rate's been driven down to 84.01. If we add our tier 2 enrichment money, we'll be at 88. Then add our 50. We're at the $1.3801, which is what I just showed you on the prior page. Because the TERS value has grown, it makes that bottom number go up for debt payment up to nearly, $2.8 million. That's great. And that's about a 6.1% decrease for our taxpayers. Great. So we need to think about that rate, that $1.3801. That's the kind of number we kind of need to focus into. More debt payment, that's good. But look, we're going to do, if we do August number 1, we're actually leaving some money on the table that we should have got from the state. So look at August 2. August 2, I'm asking you to consider adding that tax enrichment penny. I know, again, that's not popular in some ways, but if you'll think about it, it's the very same tax rate for our tax holders, our stakeholders. And so what we would do is reduce the debt by that. We would still have $2.3 million for debt repayment. That's really back. In fact, it's a little bit more than what we were talking about, June, slightly, not much. I have another scenario that I would like to talk to you about. It's probably one that I could live with, that district could live with. I think it's something we could do. I think in the spot and the times that we're in right now, I think it would be a very popular thing that we could do. It'd be fair to all groups. I think it's probably the one thing that gets everybody. We'd still keep the 84. We'd still hope for the 5. And what we would do is maybe drop that INS rate another penny. What that does for folks, we'll give them a little bit of tax relief. You say, well, do we have enough to pay the debt? Yes, we have obligated by the election to have all the elections that we're paying off, the bonds. We have to maintain a tax rate that will allow us to pay the debt. That's part of the election. We do, and we would still have about $1.7 million to pay back over and above what our normal debt service was. I like this. If you ask me whether this is the best one, it's probably not. The second one is probably the best one, but the third one, yes, we could certainly do that, and it's beneficial to everybody. Let me give you a couple of things here. If we do August number 1, we'll reduce the tax rate a little bit more. It's about 6.1% from what it was this current year. It provides additional prepayment of debt because of the TERS, because of all that's the growth in the Google out there. So those are good. There's some disadvantages. I didn't really write these out, but one thing about it, if we do this, we would have no no chance of a supplement. We would be hitting our fund balance with all the COVID expenses. So basically what this does, it's good for the taxpayers, it's good for our stakeholders, but it really doesn't do anything for all those other groups. But we would pay more debt down. Is it good? Okay, it's fine. Not as good as this one. If we do number two, we would maximize the amount of state funds to the MISD. That's just good business. That's just good for us to get as much state funds as we can. I have a problem not trying to get those extra dollars. I think it's one of our budget goals every year. Well, I know it is. And the fact, again, I don't think I'm doing my job if I don't lay all these choices out for you. I've been accused of being misguided in some other things. And look, folks, I am as transparent as they come. I'm trying to tell you all your options, and whether you agree with them or not, then that's okay. I just want to make sure that you do understand your choices. If we did number two, we would have another 1.1 million in our operating revenues. That would help us fund some of these unbudgeted COVID costs we've had. And you've been so generous with letting us get subs, letting us get custodians, letting us get PP&E, letting us get cleaning. You've been so generous there. I'd like to offset some of that if we could. It would give us a possibility. And again, I want to use that word possibility for a supplement. Without it, I don't think there's even a chance. We would reduce a tax rate for reduces the tax rate for MISD stakeholders and taxpayers. It retains the same rate as August 1. So the stakeholders are going to get the same one. If you pick one, or if you pick two, or you pick three, you're going to have a little bit less one. But for the first two, it's actually the same. And here's a big thing. It decreases the expected draw from the fund balance, because we're going to have to hit the fund balance with some of this if we don't. Now, will we have to hit it with some of it? Yes, possibly. But it sure would reduce that. And then it still keeps a very nice, sizable prepayment of the debt. It's $2.3 million, back what it was in June. So really, we still be able to pay down. Third, this is the one that I said was okay. I like it. I don't mind doing it. I think it's good. It maximizes the amount of state funds. Again, it produces additional 1.1. All that changes. All that stays the same. Helps us fund some of the unbudgeted COVID cost. Gives that possibility of a supplement again. Further reduces the tax rate. They even get 6.8% reduction in tax rate. So instead of 6.1, just going down a little bit more gives them 6.8. That's going to be a very popular thing. Decreases the expected draw from the fund balance. Again, we would be able to pay some of those things we thought we'd have to draw out. We can pay those. And reduces, but retains, that's important. It reduces, but it retains a sizable prepayment of debt. We'd still be in the 1.7, 1.8% range, and maybe a little bit more of being able to pay back some more debt. So I like that one too. All right, so my recommendation, if you ask me today, which one would you do? I would love to do number two, August number two. That's the rate that's going to be the lowest it can be for our taxpayers unless you pick number three. So number two gives us 1.3801. It maximizes state funds. It helps us in many ways. Everybody gets a little group help out of that. So I think that's good. I want to go back up here again to this and just show you the difference between 1, 2, and 3. The rate is basically the same on 1 and 2, but we get more state funds with 2. 3, if we could get more state funds and actually help our taxpayers a little bit more. So I hope you'll focus in on 2 or 3. And I hope this is making sense. This is the first time I've ever done one of these publications, so maybe it will. And hopefully this will help you as you go through these slides. There's nothing really worse than somebody talking to you about numbers over slides and over a video production. But let's hope that this is something that will help you Monday night. So please feel free to ask questions. Please feel free to have comments and concerns, whatever that might be on Monday night. It's good talking to you, and I will see you Monday night. Thank you.